What's up, witches? You're listening to The Bewitching Hour. I'm your host, Kat, and I'll be dropping exciting episodes covering everything from the history of witchcraft, aliens, the paranormal, ghost stories, and I'm excited to have guests on who have a story to tell, as well as share my experiences and perspective on living life as a modern-day witch. Grab your brooms, because it's about to get real. Before we get into this episode, I just want to briefly talk about something, and by briefly, I do not mean any disrespect because this issue definitely deserves a longer conversation. It has for a long time, and I'm struggling to keep my thoughts in line about this. I will try to articulate the best that I can. I'm probably still not going to do a great job, but just hear me out. I am literally sick to my stomach over the death of Dante Wright, and I can't not take advantage of this platform to address this issue and my feelings about it, which I'm sure are shared with many of you listeners. Dante Wright was a Black individual who was shot to death on Sunday, April 11th of 2021 in Minneapolis. He was pulled over by the police. I'm not entirely sure the exact reason he was pulled over, but I've read one reason was for having an expired registration or plates, and another was for having one of those air freshener trees hanging from his rear view mirror. Apparently those air fresheners are a traffic violation in Minneapolis, but still, neither are enough of a crime to be shot dead over. Dante was 20 years old, a kid who was shot after he got back in his car after he was being harassed by the police. He tried to drive away and then crashed his car and later died. And I'm just saying, of course he tried to get back in his car, probably because he was terrified. He knew because of the color of his skin that this situation could end horribly for him, and it did. It honestly did. A life was wasted that day. He had parents, he had a girlfriend, he had a baby to raise, and he was left dead in the street for over 6 hours while his mom begged on live TV for them to take his body, and all he wanted that day was to go get his car washed. His parents told the media he's never coming back. Just let that sink in. He's never coming back. Over what? I do not want to participate in a world where we hold the value of a human life adjacent to someone's career. I don't care if you have been a police officer for 5 months or 26 years. Not complying should not equal Black people dying. I recognize how fortunate I am to have not had a ton of negative experiences with police officers, but at the same time, I cannot be silent about those who have experienced otherwise. You can't convince me that this was accidental. Accidentally means, to me, not properly trained. You shouldn't have access to a gun if you can't get your weapons correct. 26 years in the business. If you are a seasoned police officer, you absolutely know the difference between a handgun and a taser. And I think that that is one of the things that upsets me so much. When the news about George Floyd and Breonna Taylor broke last year, I remember thinking, why is no one holding these police officers accountable? These Black individuals no longer have the chance to go home to their families, to see another day of sunshine, to tuck their kids in at night. Whatever their lives looked like, they do not get to do those things any longer. And these white cops, maybe one's wife divorced him, maybe one was released from her position as a police officer, maybe nothing happened to them at all. Maybe nothing has happened to these officers nearly as detrimental as losing a whole human life, a family member, a loved one. So why are we protecting the blue lives when a blue life is not even a real thing? It's a career choice, and Black Lives Matter is reduced to be viewed as something people chant when they're pissed off that another Black life has been lost. And this is happening while the public watches the trial for Derek Chauvin, who committed a crime that we all witnessed via social media. Can you even imagine waking up and going to work today, murdering someone's child in broad daylight, and the conversation that is had is whether or not you will be put on leave? Any other person would definitely have been tried for manslaughter, and if it were a Black person that shot a white kid, there would be no question as to what the punishment would be. Not even a second thought. Like, something needs to change. However, I am happy to hear that the officer that shot Dante and the chief of police have both resigned, but that's still not enough. Dante, I am so sorry this happened to you. Thank you for being part of such a huge lesson for us all, one that I can continue to learn every time a Black person is killed over nonsense. A lesson that continues to break my heart for the Black community, as well as break my heart for those who can't see outside of racist colored lenses. I can't believe that I live in a world where this is even an ongoing issue, and these lessons are not being learned. I want so badly to be able to change that. Not complying is not synonymous with death. Having an active warrant is not grounds to shoot anyone. Thinking an air freshener is a weapon is just fucking idiotic. And claiming to not know the difference between a gun and a taser after 26 years as a serving officer is just plain bullshit. This is for Dante. This is for George Floyd. This is for Breonna Taylor, for Trayvon Martin, for Rayshard Brooks, for Botham Jean, for Philando Castile, for Tamir Rice, for all of those who have lost their lives to the hands of the people and the weapons of the people meant to protect us. Say their names and do better, humans of the earth. This should not be an issue in the year of 2021.
I never pictured myself as a monster.
I know that was super heavy, but it's been on my mind, and like I said, I can't have this platform and not say something. So I do have a few things to announce before we get into the episode. If you haven't noticed yet, the Bewitching Hour got a makeover, and I am so in love with the new artwork. One of my friends designed it. It's kind of Bewitched inspired, which turned out so perfect because if you aren't familiar with the show Bewitched, the main character, Samantha Stevens, is also kind of like a seemingly normal woman navigating life and love with her magic, and I love the theme of it all. I love it. Also, the podcast episodes are now up on YouTube, which is super exciting because I got to record a video interview with my next guest. So if you are interested in watching us chat, you can check that out on YouTube. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is Linktree. I have a Linktree now, so all of the links related to the Bewitching Hour are now in one place. And I'm going to be bringing back my Amazon recommendations. The YouTube link is on there. Eventually, merch, if we get to that point, will be on there. So go check it out. You can find the Linktree information in the bio of the Bewitching Hour's Instagram. So my next guest has been pretty blue for a while, but not in the way that you would expect. I was introduced to Mr. He last summer as part of a quarantine movie club, which I really miss it. And our friendship just kind of grew from there. Mr. He is an artist, a horror super fan, an unbelievable performer, a writer, and as if that wasn't a long enough list of accomplishments and things that make Mr. He so wonderful, she has showed us her true talents as an amazing musical artist with 2 hit singles that have recently dropped. Mr. He released Zombie Boy first, and her newest single is called The Bride Of. She truly takes the essence of horror and kind of turns it into something of a queer beauty, something that no one has ever really done before. We are talking horror movies in this episode, her experiences, queer life, what it was like filming a music video in a morgue, because yeah, that really happened. The inspiration behind her music, we're just going to get into it all and kind of find out how it all culminates into the art that Mr. He creates. She is such an inspiring individual, and I can't wait for y'all to hear her story. And by the way, we talked for almost 2 hours, so I am splitting this episode into 2 parts. So you have even more Mr. He to look forward to in the near future. Let's meet Mr. He, and again, if you want to see her fully painted and in true Mr. He form, head to YouTube for the video version of this episode. Enjoy!
I never pictured myself as a monster until I needed you as my bride, and I know we'll be the only one to know that I'm terrified. I'm terrified.
I am here with Mr. He, the one and only. Oh my god, I'm so excited. You're a horror queen.
I'm a scream queen, 100%.
Okay, so we're just going to jump right into it then. Really, the reason that I know you is A, through my brother, B, through Uncle Spooky, which he will be on a future episode, and we can get into that later. And then C, you hosted a summer movie club that got me through the first portion of quarantine.
Oh, yeah.
Morning movies, that's what it was. So
Yeah.
really, that's how we know each other, and it's just kind of been this little blossoming relationship, and oh my god, I'm just so happy that you're doing this.
Yeah, 100%. I think that you and I really formed our friendship through Uncle Spooky. Once we started to sort of hang out virtually without Muffy, that's sort of when I was like, oh, wow, maybe we are blossoming a friendship, rather than me thinking don't read into this too much. This is just sort of superficial. She's just being nice to you because you're Muffy's friend. And now I was like, oh, wait, no, she's my friend, you
Oh,
know?
that is so not who I am. Like, if I feel like you're somebody that I give a shit about, like, I will talk to you. That's not me being nice. That is me just like making the effort to be friends.
Yeah.
Anyway, so like I said, that kind of like got me through quarantine, and we did do like quite a bit of I guess like horror genre type movies, more so with Uncle Spooky. So I just want to know, like, with the horror scary movie type of thing, like what got you into that?
Okay. This is sort of always where do you start with this question?
Sure.
And for me, in terms of what got me into it, it was simply that I grew up in a really private religious environment. And so anything that's seen as like other or outlawed is always a curiosity. And, like Harry Potter wasn't allowed. So the idea of getting to like watch a Harry Potter film was like, oh my God, wow. Like, don't tell my teachers or else they're going to be so mad that my parents let me watch this, So
Whoa.
being able to slowly work your way up to watching Goosebumps, like Night of the Living Dummy, like destroyed me because I had never seen anything like horror adjacent. And so that like really stuck with me for a long time. And once my dad tricked me into watching The Blair Witch Project
Oh
and was
my
like,
God.
"This is a real movie. This is found footage. You've just turned 13. Like, I think you're old enough to watch this." And I thought it was real. And I went to school the next day and I was like, I couldn't sleep. My teacher was concerned for me because I was like falling asleep in homeroom. She was like, "Is everything okay?" And I had to tell her that, I saw someone die last night. Like, excuse me? I was like, I promise I wouldn't say, but like, I watched The Blair Witch. I saw the movie tapes and like, they're dead. And like, I can't sleep. And she had to break it down that they were actors and like showed me what IMDb was and told me that my dad was playing a prank on me. I remember standing in the pickup zone with my like arms crossed, waiting for Dexter to pull on in because I was about to give it to him because I was so embarrassed that my teacher had to explain to me that I had been pranked,
I
you
love
know?
that. That is amazing.
That like emotional charge because then everyone was like, "What was that? What did you see? What did you do?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, it was a scary movie." And then I realized like I'm kind of cool because I watched that. And so then I wanted to level up. Then it was I want to watch Paranormal Activity and I want to watch this and I want to watch Prom Night and I want to, suddenly I couldn't watch enough of them because it was sort of me building up my repertoire of like no one at school knew them. No one at school had even heard of them or would be allowed to watch them. So I got to be the one to like tell them everything, you know? And then there's this one scene where this girl, she's behind, like I became the storyteller. It was like my job to watch and then fill every single person in on like what the hype was about.
So you mentioned that you went to like a private religious high school. Tell me more about that experience. Just because I've had like other people talk about it, and I just want to get your perspective on what that was like for you.
Yeah, I mean, I have listened to every single episode of this podcast, so I'm very in tune with what has been discussed. So I want to try to make sure I'm not hitting any repetitive topics. But I know in one, I think it was the one with your brother, you talked about how the church like saved you and then destroyed you.
Yeah.
And it was very much that with me in terms of it was all I really knew. And so when I was almost expelled for my sexuality, my senior year of high school,
Is that even
I
legal?
had no choice but yeah.
I'm sorry, that is horrifying.
I mean, at
You were
private,
almost expelled for your sexuality. What?
yeah, but they were too scared to expel me because I was like popular. I know,
Ew. Ew.
joke.
Ew.
Literally, the principal told me that. No, we're not gonna let you go because you do too much for the school, is what I was told. AKA they were scared there was gonna be like a riot. because I was like popular.
That almost makes me wish they would have, just so that riot could have happened, because that is the most atrocious thing I've ever heard.
Me too.
Like,
Me
holy
too.
fuck. Holy fuck, pun
I know.
intended.
They were like, please don't go into any tabloids. And I mean, I was like the only gay person I knew in the world. You know, I didn't know like any other sort of like existence. And so when I felt alone, it was really nice to be able to sort of turn to a God and be like, oh, I'm not alone. But you have that like pendulum of, wait a minute, why is this saving me? Yeah, over here, like, why are these people destroying me?
Hmm.
And then I think that is the difference between like spirituality and religion. Like with religion and practice comes like those around you, and spirituality becomes like sort of a selfish act of internal focus.
And there's
And
nothing wrong with that.
yeah, so I think that was sort of the moment where I went, okay, I think I need to become spiritual, because clearly it felt like religion didn't want anything to do with me. I didn't want to turn my back on it because it was all I knew. And if I turned my back on it, then I would have truly had no one.
I understand where you're coming from in regard to that. What would you say, like, currently your spiritual practice is? Like, what does being spiritual mean to you at this point in your life?
I'll say it like I'm a sucker for Christianity. You know, I I love the iconography of Jesus. I love this idea of like the man who was like the martyr and the sacrifice. Like there are definitely elements of it that I realize are like can be seen as an eye roll. And I totally understand the like problematic history of like Christians and oppression and genocide and, you know, like the doctrine destroying lives, like 100%. So I'm empathetic to that. But there are, it's almost like aesthetics that
Hmm.
I really cling to and really appreciate. And I like the idea of a creator. I like the idea of a creator humanizing himself. I like the idea of an end, like, you know, the revelation. I like the idea of having a path. You know, I like the idea of heaven and hell, of consequence. I think that there are like loopholes and problems, and you know, I'm not saying that my beliefs are rigid and like every single word in scripture and all that kind of stuff, but so much of it was just me being brought up and raised in it.
Yeah, same.
Me going, you know what? I don't like that part, but I do like that. And I even some of the bad stuff, like I like knowing, okay, wait a minute, I need to work with that. I like the
So,
idea of consequence because it makes me sort of try.
so would you say, like, for you, consequence and judgment are like hand in hand? Or I guess judgment would come
Mm,
first, consequence after? I'm just curious, just because I didn't go to like a super religious high school. Like, I went to a very small town high school, but essentially, like, those people are all very religious. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them were. And it just, I never really
my
felt like I
nose is
fit
so-
in.
No, I think that the idea of karma, you know,
Hmm.
I don't think sometimes consequence equals judgment. I think consequence can equal forgiveness, but I think that sometimes you need to know you're doing wrong.
Yeah, totally. Out of that spiritual, basically terrorism, how did Mr. He come out of that kind of like shadow?
So,
Like,
Mr. He to me, I always say that Mr. He is the ghost under my sheets. I like the idea of an afterlife because I love the idea of ghosts. And I think it's my adoration and admiration for ghosts that build my ideas on religion and spirituality. And that being said, it's because I love the idea of closure, of like finishing a project. I love the idea of a spirit having to linger around because something wasn't finished or something needs help or something must be done. And so Mr. He was the personification of closure. It was the personification of How do you heal the things that are impossible to heal? The like ideas, the trauma, the parts of yourself that no one wants to see or listen to. And after playing around and workshopping for so many years, and I suddenly continued to paint myself blue, and slowly but surely this caricature of what I call the ghost underneath the sheet was formed, inhabited, and I think it allows me to search for closure in everything, you know. In the songs I write and the performances I do, it's all about longing, it's all about fear, it's all about sort of anger and misery. Rarely is it ever like a happy go lucky time. And that's simply because I'm not here to just twirl. Like
Mhm.
I've created a manifestation that allows me to publicly work through my trauma. And because I'm painted like this, people find it socially acceptable. Where if I wasn't painted blue, I would just be some boy crying at a piano. And when you characterize it and you sort of like dehumanize it a little, people go, that's not a human, that's a performer, that's a creature. And now I can empathize with it. Humans have lost touch with, you know, humanity, humankind. It's impossible for individuals to empathize with one another. I think that's why I love horror, because I think horror is the singular way to teach empathy. And I think that that's what I'm doing. And that's why I call what I do a horror show.
Yeah, I love that. So for Mr. He, like, is it supposed to sound like mystery? Or did
It
that just kind of organically happen? Like, was that intentional?
It was a little bit of both.
Okay.
Originally, I'm not gonna say what my original name was, but I love the idea of being
That's fine.
anonymous. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's where the House of Femanon comes from. We were a group of individuals who were not doing this for social clout. Like we could have done it completely anonymous had we not started getting booked. I would go to the club all the time, and I would change my name every single night because I didn't want people to know who I was. I just wanted to know them to know what I was bringing to the club in terms of art and presence. So unfortunately, that they need a name for a check, and they need a name for the flyer. And so I was trying to figure out how I could build a name that sold mysterious quality. Mystery's too cheap. Scooby Doo already did Mr. E. And I
Mhm.
thought, well, you know, Mr. He is sort of has that play, but it jokes with gender as it's so masculine, yet I'll use feminine pronouns. So the like, oh, Mr. He, she's great, really forces you to think on like, you have to sort of pay attention to what you're saying and what's going on.
And I love that because I feel like that really gives people the opportunity to be mindful.
Yeah, it gives you the opportunity to be mindful, but it gives you the opportunity to also be in on the joke, to go like, oh, gender is performative and gender can be chosen as sort of like a touchy word, you know, because I
Mhm.
don't want people to sort of exploit that, but it's gender's what you want it to be. So I can want my personification to sound as masculine as possible, Mr. He, and
Mhm.
then everything else about it be feminine. It sort of discredits any bit of masculinity to those terms. And I sort of like find that humorous, being that I think the last thing we need is like more masculine energy.
Oh, fuck, tell me about it.
So I would rather associate masculine energy with me and then just sort of like destroy it from within.
So does the color blue for you then come from, like, kind of the whole, like, boys like blue, girls like pink bullshit that we were raised on, or is there, like, a
Um,
specific reason?
yes and no. So that sort of happened, you know, unconsciously. The first show I ever wrote was called The Blue Boy with the Sandcastle Heart. And the blue just always really stood out to me. And I wanted to make a character that was sort of iconic in imagery, that was really recognizable in an instant and could be replicated and noticed. And so I wanted it to be blue.
Mhm.
And, I was writing the show called The Boy with the Sandcastle Heart. And then once the character became blue, I was like, okay, well, now it's the blue boy with the sandcastle heart. And I was like, okay, now that's really interesting because now it's sort of like masculine, masculine, blue boy, just
Mhm.
like Mr. He, and blue boy was all about this sort of like unworldly creature rolling out of the ocean and getting 24 hours to sort of walk on land before getting called back in by the moon. And
That sounds
there's a
awesome.
famous painting called The Blue Boy. And I was like, oh my gosh, wow, it's so weird that there would be this really famous painting called The Blue Boy. And then I realized that there was this sister painting called Pinky, which was a girl in a pink dress. And that these two paintings traveled the world in tandem. And there are knockoffs of it, there are salt and pepper shakers of it, there are figurines, there are plates, there is merch for these paintings. And I had never heard of them, but they're sort of synonymous with blue means boy and pink means girl. But here's
Mhm.
the gag that people don't realize: the paintings have nothing to do with each other. They're not even painted by the same artist. They're painted like years and years and years and years and years apart from each other. They literally have nothing to do with each other except for the fact that we've societally put them together.
Wow, I wanna look
And
those up because I've never heard of it.
I was like, excuse me? That's sort of everything I'm talking about. It's like, this is all a joke. Like, this
Mhm.
is all society. And then I realized that there was a gay porn magazine called Blue Boy. And I was like, girl, okay, now this is comical. Now there's this sort of like weird, estranged queer element to it. Like, it was some vintage porno. They don't even make it anymore. But like, that just made me go, okay, this is it. Like, I'm settled. Blue Boy is it. That is gonna be my shtick. But once I was done with the show, I didn't want Blue Boy to live on. Like, I didn't want Blue Boy to be at the club. I wanted
Mhm.
Blue Boy to like stay in, like, Blue Boy's back in the ocean. Blue Boy is like, at rest. So I needed a name that sort of did that same tandem. And Mr. He, I thought, was like everything just sort of came full circle. It was like, wow, this all sort of makes sense. And it just felt like the world was pushing me and pushing me and pushing me towards this direction. And I was like, all right, Moon, I get it. I'm doing it. Thank you.
Those reaffirmations of, like, you're where you're supposed to be, and they come in, like, small messages like that, I always get tripped out over hearing stories like that.
Oh, I have more of them than anyone I know. Everyone always says it's Parker's world. Like my parents' friends, my neighbors, anyone, Parker's world, because, believing in manifestation or not, I've just, I feel like I'm very in tune with what the world sort of wants from me. And
Mhm.
because of that, like, the most unreal magical experiences happen. And I'm grateful for that.
Mr. He actually just came out with 2 hit singles. I'm so obsessed with both of them, like, I feel like they're forever stuck in my head. My mom's listened to them with me, I've showed my friends, like, it's, like, such a bop on the way to work in my car, and I'm like, "Hell yeah, this is exactly how I wanna start my day." But I just have to know, for your single, Zombie Boy, what was it like filming in a morgue?
It was a private autopsy clinic, and, I wanted the real deal. So I'm very grateful that I was given 4 hours to make it happen. And I made the most of those 4 hours, and it was like 4 hours, you pull in, you pull out. Like, there is no lollygagging around.
How did you
And
even get that permission? Like, how did you even approach them and be like, "Hey, can I film here?" Because I feel like most places would be like, "No."
well, so I called asking if I could borrow a prop. I'm like, can I borrow a table? And this woman on the phone was like, well, why not the room? And I was like, excuse
Shut
me?
up.
The room? She's like, yeah, we have a room you can film in. And I was like, and then I sent them the song and they loved the song and they said they wanted to be a part of it.
That's
That's
amazing.
the story. Game over. Wow, this is so full circle. It literally just sort of, it really just like fell into my lap.
And I know people like listening to this obviously can't see the video, but you guys need to check it out. The guy that played like your love interest,
Dapper
so
good looking.
hot. Oh my
Oh,
God, he was so hot.
thank you. I definitely was
Yeah.
like, he'll do.
Yeah, for sure. And then the part at the end when you just like kind of fell into the lake, I was like, oh, that was everything.
Oh my God, thank you.
That's my favorite part, I think.
I'll take it.
For your second hit single, The Bride Of, you had an audio visualizer where you had a turned over car that said like spray painted just married on it. So like The Bride Of, like obviously you get the point. How did people not freak out? Because like you could see the highway like right behind it.
People did.
Okay.
We definitely had some looky loo, and luckily I was far enough from the freeway that people couldn't just like pull off. We
Mhm.
were near a motorcycle trail, so a lot of motorcycle riders came to like make sure we were okay. Because once we started the fog machines and it looked like the car was on fire, there definitely started to get a lot of traction. But we did that so fast. We were in and out in maybe 2 hours tops. We pulled up to the space. I had scouted the location. I knew exactly where I wanted, how to do it. We did this at 7 in the morning because we wanted it like low sunlight, low crowds. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning to start to do my makeup. And we showed up. We put the car on the road. We put a jack lift as high as we could. The three of us, me, my dad, and the photographer, Adam Karjinian, got under the car, pushed it, flipped it over. The windshield shattered, oil started to pour, and we threw some sand on the oil, set up the fog machine, and Adam said, "Get in the car." So
Wow.
I literally quickly, I had grease all over me because I was underneath the car. I was filthy. I said, "Thank God I packed my thigh-high boots." You know, my outfit is covering me, covered in like dirt and grease. And then I crawled in the window, and my dad says, "Okay, you get one or two shots tops. Like we need to leave before the Rangers come." And so the visualizer is a single shot of me escaping the car, running away. And then literally, I kid you not, the second we said cut, that car was yanked to my car, flipped back over, put on a trailer. And as we were driving away, the Rangers pulled up.
Did you have to explain to them like what you were doing, or did they even ask, or did you just
Yeah,
drive off?
we were just driving away.
Did
We were
any of
good.
the motorcyclists like stop and like observe? Like, was there any
Yeah.
observation, or did
They
people
were
just kind of?
definitely like taking photos of us and like, is everything okay? Like really doing the most, but whatever.
Wow. I love that your dad was so involved in it as well. Like, I feel like you have just from the things that I know so far about you, you have such a great support system.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. My dad's been always been really into horror and haunted houses and like sort of visual. He loves to like build sort of like larger scale things.
Hmm.
And I just told myself like, oh wow, if I want to have a relationship with him and I want to create stuff with him, I'm going to need to learn how to sort of shift what I do into a world where he can participate. And I told him like, I want to flip the car over. And of course it starts with no, that's going to be way too difficult. And then 2 days later, he's always like, okay, but if we do this, it should work, you know? So I'm really grateful that it's taken some time, but we've gotten to the point where now when I say these like super unrealistic ideas, it's going to happen. A
Yeah,
flipped over car crash, done, made it work.
I
Like,
love that he's so
I
on
can't be
board.
stopped.
Yeah. So I definitely want to talk about like your family more. Just going back to your two songs, just to kind of wrap that portion up. What was the inspiration? Because I want to read this. I actually printed out your lyrics because I was like, okay, I need a breakdown. So the first verse you say, I know what it's like to have no one believe in you, and I know what it's like to have to fight for your truth. There was another part where you said, why is it that I don't scream when I see a ghost in front of me? And I was like, that's me. And then also, you never pictured yourself as a monster until you needed someone as your bride. I want the breakdown of those lyrics. What was
Okay.
the inspiration?
Being queer. I
Mhm.
think growing up in an environment where, you're told, okay, boy marries girl, family, marriage, dog, White House picket fence seems ideal to so many. And from an early age, when the mindset of like, okay, this is what your future looked like, it felt off. It like I knew something was wrong. And so I felt, like I said in the lyric, I didn't feel like I was a monster until I was told I needed the bride, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
And, I built this caricature for myself, this drag persona, this creature, and I love the universal classics. I love Frankenstein, I love the Wolfman, I love Dracula. And I always thought, Mr. He's going to be right up with them. I wanted to just nudge right next to them. But then I thought, well, Frankenstein has a bride, Dracula has his brides. Like, what the heck? Even in this like made up world, I still need a bride. I was like, you're literally joking right now. I did everything I could to escape this, and I found myself right back where I started. And so, well, then I realized that that depends on how you see me. If you see me as a woman, a drag queen, then the idea of a woman saying, I never pictured myself as a monster until I wanted a bride, then that's the queer experience. Realizing you want a same sex lover and going, I'm a monster. But if you see me as a male having the fear of meeting a woman, it's also could be seen as the fear of commitment. It could be seen as the fear of like regularity, the fear of, the queer experience. It's like both hands. I think it's like such a universal thing because it is a societal aspect that sort of everyone experiences when they realize or are being told you either need to become a bride or you need one. And so the bride of was sort of me going, I hate that we've established these horror icons that are the bride of someone, that they aren't a singular force to be reckoned with. They are nothing but that of the man. And because of that, like, if I were to ask you, what's the Bride of Frankenstein's real name? Do you know?
No, like all I know about her, I mean, obviously I love that movie and like my favorite part is when she hisses at him, but no, I don't know her like real name.
And I mean, she's only in 5 minutes of the film. She's only in
Right.
the final scene, and yet she's
The
the
whole
main
movie is about her. Yeah.
of the film. I mean, the whole movie is Frankenstein.
Mhm.
It's them sort of with the quest of her, but she is nothing other than of Frankenstein. And I think that is my fear of commitment. That like for me to be with someone would be me to completely erase myself. And
Is
so
that due to like wanting to be seen as an equal because you don't ever, I mean, I would never want to be like, oh, this is the girlfriend of, like, I'm my own person.
for me, I think it's more of, I don't want to say selfishness, but I feel like I've come a really long way in self development. And so the idea that someone could come along and possibly derail that. And I understand that, you could meet someone who loves you and betters you. And like, I'm not saying that's not a possibility, but there are toxic environments and there are toxic relationships and toxic marriages. And most marriages end in failure. And so the idea that I could end up in a toxic one unknowingly, where I just become that of somebody else and erase myself, is something that I never want to experience and something that I never want to give to somebody else. And not to say that someone would have to be the bride of me, but like I want to be myself. I also don't seek for relationships and don't aspire to marriage and don't aspire to have a partner in my life. So I think that that sort of may have a little bit of a cynical attitude towards, love and marriage, and that of the song is. But for me, I think the biggest thing that people don't realize about the bride of is that I'm being very genuine when I sing it. And most people who know me know that everything is sort of laced in a humor. And I understand that it's funny because the idea of me being scared of falling in love with a woman is comical. I realize that because society says that that's normal, you know? But that's not what I'm scared of. What I'm scared of is when you grow up queer, you spend so much of that trying to justify yourself, to justify your love. And then you get to a point where hopefully those around you all accept your love for what you've said it is. So if I'm like, I'm gay, I'm queer, I'm blah, 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 and I fall in love with a man, everyone's going to be like, we're so happy for you. If I live this extremely queer lifestyle and then this cis woman out of nowhere comes into my life and I coincidentally fall madly in love with her, no one would believe me. And I'd be right back where I started, having to justify my love. And that
Mhm.
fear makes me sick to my stomach because now I have forced someone into a queer experience who hasn't had any training, maybe didn't want this. Because you look at like socialites and celebrities like Hugh Jackman, who people make fun of for being gay, but forget that like he has a wife. So every time you're mocking him for his sexuality, you're discrediting her marriage to him.
But then you're also making fun of all the other people that may be gay or queer or whatever label, whatever they want to call themselves,
Uh,
and that's not okay either.
and I get that there's a humor to like, ooh, like they're gay and they're flamboyant. Like I get that, and the the attempt to like out major celebrities to sort of raise a cause and be like, look, they're just like us, they're just not coming out. But the idea that I would be in love with a woman and that the woman would then have to go through this sort of queer awakening really rapidly, really fast, because everyone would be like, your husband's gay.
Or like, how does everybody know but her? Like, I hate that shit.
Yeah. And, don't get me wrong, it's because there are scenarios where that happens and
Of
people
course.
are dishonest and they think that they're helping. No, but to sort of wrap that up, it's just that that's why I say I know what it's like to have to fight for your truth, and I wouldn't want to put her through it because some people can't handle that. And the idea that, oh my God, it like makes me emotional. The idea that I could be in love with someone, but they couldn't handle that. And that is the reason our love crumbles, is because of what I had to overcome every single day of my life that you couldn't handle for
5
a
seconds.
day,
Yeah.
a second, like would discredit the love so fast. But if it was really love for me, that's why the song ends with me going, you'd walk out and leave and I'd still be here.
Just from reading the lyrics, like, of course I've listened to the song, but like now that I've actually put the lyrics on paper, the song is great. Like that is absolutely, like, I'm not taking away from that, but it's so much deeper on paper because you don't have like the fun music, you don't have like your cute little voice like singing, and like you read it and it's like, shit, bitch, this is deep. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
definitely. I didn't want this to be the second song I came out with because it's one of my favorites I've written. And I think lyrically, it's probably the deepest in terms
Mhm.
of like true trauma and fear. And so I was really vulnerable to that. And coincidences happened, and I recorded another song, and then timing and family stuff and everything sort of, it just didn't feel right. And the next thing you know, I was like, okay, well, what now? And the bride of was just sitting there. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I recorded another song. I had a feature. I had matching outfits made for the music video for me and the feature. And now none of that's happening. And I mean, just not happening yet. But that was the thing. It was like, I can't believe this is going to be my sequel. Like, every single horror, my sequel is going to be the bride of. And I did every single thing I could to avoid this. And what happened? I fell right into the trope. I fell right into the trap.
But I also
So
think it's, like, such important representation for the lack of, the queer, presence in the horror genre today, or even, in the classics, because you do refer to the classics, like The Bride of, obviously, but that representation is not there. So the fact that you are able to provide that for, say, another queer horror fan or someone who doesn't know where they are but loves horror, like, I just think that you are doing such an important thing.
well, thank you. I think that horror is like inherently queer, simply because it's always the story of the other. And
Mhm,
to be queer is to be other. And therefore, I think that's why outcasted communities latch onto horror, because it's the only sort of moments of power or authority they may feel while watching something, because they're not being represented in movies and television. But hey, here's this kooky film with this weird character or persona, monster or not, that's, has strength and a storyline. And, we gravitate towards that. I'm really grateful to be pushing these narratives. And, you know, I think the last lyric you said is, why is it I don't scream when I see a ghost?
mhm,
Because to me, that was a bride. I didn't want to say, do you see the bride floating? Do you see the ghost floating? Do you see the bride hunting you underneath her veil? Like, ew, trope, you know what I mean? Like, I can only say that's not appealing, because anybody can see a bride in a veil, but not everybody sees a ghost.
mhm.
And so for me, the idea of seeing sort of a ghost bride in front of me, haunting me under her sheet or haunting me under her veil, was appealing, because it meant this is my worst fear. This ghost, this bride is standing right in front of me. Maybe we're in front of the church, maybe we're in front of a congregation, and we kiss. Maybe we say I do. I remember how she kissed me on both cheeks. There was a rejoicing, there was a coming together. And all of this was because the fear of dying alone was so strong that I committed myself to the ghost, or to the bride, which is the metaphor. So I'm happy that this song came out, because I think it showed people that they should really be paying attention to my lyrics, because the songs may sound super fun and bubbly, but that may not be what's going on in the vocals. Uh,
Exactly.
and I think my next song will sort of really shock people, vocally, lyrically, and sonically, honestly.
Well, thank you so much for explaining that. Like, I really wanted to touch base on that. But since you brought up your next song, tell us what is next.
I don't want to give too much away, but I will let you know my next song is called 6 Feet Deep, and it is a country rock arena anthem. And it is a story about knowing when to walk away and wanting so badly to get an apology. And so you stay in a toxic environment because you want so badly to like be the bigger person, and for the other individual to know that they did wrong. And I think that it is that waiting that buries you 6 feet deep. So
I cannot wait to hear this one. I feel like that is
yes.
speaking to my life already, and I haven't even heard the damn song. So, love it. So, for your previous two songs, I participated because, like, how could I not? You did mixtapes slash promo packages for your singles. Are we going to get to see another thing like that for this next single?
Yeah, I think there'll probably be one more for the bride of. I have a few tricks up my sleeve. And then,
Yay.
you know, out of nowhere, I'll announce some new little mystery, and those who are paying attention will participate. I like people who put the work in and put the effort in, and I always try to reward those who do. And I don't want to make it too easy. So
So
you may never know when it's coming, but I always have stuff in the works. Exactly.
I have my finger. I'm too scared to eat it because it does look like a real finger. This
It's really
was
good. It's good chocolate. I made sure we got nice chocolate,
Oh,
not
I
sugar.
believe you, but I'm also, like, sad to see it go. Kind of going back to because we had talked about this, you mentioned your dad and, like, I obviously see how supportive he is, but you and your family kind of do, like, a haunted house or something every year? Like, what's that
Yeah.
about? I wanna know more about that because I saw
So
your pandemic style for last year, and it was insane, so I'm like, "Oh, what do they do when we be around people?" You know?
yeah, we love to build haunted houses. We build home haunts. Um, in 2020, I actually was supposed to go pro, and we had these grandiose plans of launching our official haunted house company at RuPaul's Drag Con. We had a booth, we had everything.
What?
And yes, and I had this whole thing where I was going to do a 12 by 12 haunted experience where you would walk in, there'd be a scare, and you'd leave. And that was going to be my booth. And then there was a convention a few months later called Midsummer Scream, and I was going to do an installation there and make it a little bit bigger. And then in October, I was going to do our home haunt, which we always open up free to the public, and where we build a sort of walkthrough experience. And then I had, at the time, sort of made an agreement with a warehouse haunted house where Mr. He was going to take over their 3 mazes in December. So in 1 year, you are going to see it go from a 12 by 12 space to an entire warehouse. And I was going to literally launch this, haunted house designing company. And 2020 beat me up and said,
Mm.
psych, no one can come close to each other. How are you going to put on a show? And I said, well, I have this song. And because of that, Zombie Boy was made.
It's been a while since I've seen you, and you look good.
I don't know about you guys, but I feel like this week has already been insane and it's only Tuesday. But I hope this episode brought you as much joy as it brought me to interview Mr. He. And while you guys are waiting for episode 2, like I promised, it will be out next Wednesday. Go follow Mr. He on Instagram at Mr. He Slasher. Go download her singles, Zombie Boy and the Bride of, on iTunes and Spotify. And then if you want to check out those audio visualizer videos, those are also up on YouTube. I will see you guys next Wednesday. Thanks for listening.
I'm in love with the zombie boy, with the zombie boy.
Thank you for listening to the Bewitching Hour podcast. Again, I'm your host, Kat, and you can follow me on Instagram at Kat Alexander with 2 R's. You can follow the Bewitching Hours Instagram at Bewitching Podcast. And please, don't forget to rate me 5 stars and leave a nice review. In perfect love and perfect trust, until next time.
She was just a wish. She was just a wish. And her memory is all that is left of her now. Lightning